Hi, I am Dr. Charlita Jones, and I am here today to talk about another five things good topic. And the topic that I thought to talk about today was about something that I heard during my quiet time in my Bible study lesson. And so I listened to this story about Hagar. Hagar is a biblical historical character that is in the Old Testament, and it is in Genesis, the 16th chapter. And it talks about a bondwoman, a woman that was a servant to Sarah, which was Abraham's wife. So in the book of Genesis, chapter 16, Old Testament, you will discover that there's three things going on here. You got Abraham, you got Sarah, their husband and wife, and then you have Hagar, which is the servant to Sarah. And so, what has happened? A story. God has promised Sarah and Abraham a child, but they're not able to conceive at this particular time after the promise had been given to them. And so they used the servant of Sarah to be joined with Abraham in order to have and conceive a baby. So Hagar is pregnant, and as you know, normal with human behavior, especially between women, a jealousy developed between Sarah because Hagar is pregnant, but the promise was given to Sarah. So, what I want to talk about today is because when Sarah, which had a little bit authority and she had a little leeway over Hagar because Abraham was her husband, and the camp or the place where Hagar was residing was in Sarah's camp. So that made Sarah have more authority, have more favor, and Hagar worked for Sarah. So Sarah dismissed Hagar and asked Hagar to leave. And Hagar's countenance became downcast. She was very discouraged. In the book of 16, it talks about how when Sarah sent her away, pushed her away, ignored her. And she had to be one of her favorites because she chose Hagar in the very beginning to lie with her husband Abraham in order to conceive a baby because it had been promised to them and some time went by and it still had not happened. And so they lost hope, Abraham and Sarah. And so they included Hagar in the midst of their family drama. What I look like is family drama because the promise was given to Abraham and Sarah, but Hagar was just a servant. So, although Sarah developed a jealousy with Hagar when she conceived and became pregnant, and so she sent her away. And so, when I was listening this morning, I heard a voice, and as I was listening to the Bible study lesson, the Lord told Hagar five things to know when you are in a situation like Hagar. Number one, you need to know that Sarah ran Hagar out of the camp. And so, what does that mean? Sometimes in our life, we will be ran away from things. We will be discouraged from things. We will be ran away from the giddy, happy love that we may once had for a business idea, or entrepreneurship, or something we know, writing a book, or we may be ran out of corporation, or we may be ran out of college, wherever you may be in your life, you may have been pushed away and set aside, and it has left your soul downcast. It has left you downcast. And so, the number one thing you have to remember in the experience with Hagar, sometimes in life we're going to be ran away, we're going to be pushed away, although we did not sign up for it, although we don't know why life has come in to give us such bad news. But I'm here today to tell you for the very first thing that we need to know about Hagar, that life happens and sometimes that will happen. So the second thing we need to know in dealing with this story between Sarah and Hagar, the second thing is to know that the Lord had called her back. So sometimes when we're dealing with these situations in life, when we've been pushed away from our dreams, when we've been pushed out of our comfort zone, when we have lost some things and it was out of our control, when we run away, today you should hear a voice that is saying, for this year, for 2024, calling you back to those things, telling you to go back. Go back where you lost. Go back where you first found yourself going out of spiral. I had a pastor at one time in my life says, always go back to where the trouble started when it began. Sometimes we physically can't do that, but in our mind and with a notebook or with a little notepad or maybe in a little journal, you will go into and write down, those things, those thoughts, and see what is it you need to return back to when you hear that voice telling you it's time for you to go back. This is a season and hour for you to cross over and for you to go back. Third thing you need to know about this story between Sarah and Hagar is trust the Lord. So one thing about it, God did give Sarah a promise, but God also too, when Sarah kicked Hagar out, and Hagar was out in the wilderness by herself, the Lord called Hagar to a promise. Now, the key thing to this is the promise that he gave Sarah is not the same as Hagar. So sometimes we have to remember the promises that God give us, they're all different. You have your promise, I have my promise. Two separate promises. And sometimes too much in life we try to grasp and hold on to affirmations and philosophies and key things to be able to speak that's not of ours. It belongs to someone else. And so you have to realize that today in this hour, God has a promise for you. And he is so faithful. He told Sarah, I will be faithful. And I give you a promise that is the same promises that I have given to Sarah. It's different, but I'm going to give you a promise. And you can read about what that promise was in Genesis 16 in Old Testaments in the Bible. But he gave her a promise before he sent her back. And the fourth thing that you need to know, that with that promise, he she had to swallow her pride. Who wants to go back to a woman that's going to be mean to you? Who wants to go back to a woman that you have served? And evidently there was something special there, because Sarah trusted Hagar to be able to sleep with her husband and then have his baby. So Sarah turned on her, and that was very heartening, and it hurt Hagar and left her confused. But the Lord said, Hagar, I want you to return back. I want you to go back. So on Hagar aspect, to be able to be obedient to what she heard, she had to swallow her pride, humble herself, shake the dust off her feet, ignore her enemies, and go back. And so, as you read the story, Hagar did go back. She went back. Things really didn't change, but that's okay, because Hagar, in her own private life, in her own heart, in her own knowledge, and what she knew and what was spoken to her when the angel of the Lord visited her when she ran off to the wilderness, that God has given her promise. And so sometimes in life today, you got to swallow your pride. You got to humble yourself, shake the dust off your feet, and remember what God has said to you today. And lastly, the promise will come to pass. Sometimes we forget. Sometimes we think that it's not going to happen. But Hagar had her baby. She had her child. The promises in their lives were fulfilled. Not the same promises as Sarah, but in Hagar's life, the promises were fulfilled. So yeah, you may not feel like you're the special one. Yeah, sometimes in the family dynamics we feel alone and left out. Sometimes in a job because of statue or who you may be or not be. Sometimes we get low overlooked, but that's okay. God never looks. He's no respecter of person. He sees us all. He knows us all. And today, guess what? He knows you. So I want you to remember the 5 things about Hagar that we must remember from the book of the Bible, in the book of Genesis, chapter 16, that Hagar, she was thrown out. She was made to go to the wilderness. It was out of her control. 2, in the wilderness, you will hear that voice. And it may be telling you today, go back. Go back to those things. Remember, expound again, dream again, have faith again, smile again, get excited again. And 3, when you do go back, guess what? It ain't gonna be easy, but God has a promise for you. Write down your goals. Remember those promises. Think of your own affirmations and not someone else's. Know your own philosophy. Know those things that God is speaking and calling your ear. Humble yourself is the 4th thing. Swallow your pride. Shake the dust off your feet and forget your enemies. But keep your hope and your energy and your mind in the mind of Christ. And be encouraged today. And lastly, you will see your promise. I am Dr. Charlita Jones, and I just come here today to just share 5 things on what I know about life. Thank you. God bless you and enjoy and have a wonderful, wonderful day.